This call is now being recorded.
Hope my PT is visible to all of you.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So a pleasant good morning to you all. So first of all, on behalf of our Sri Venkateshwara College of Engineering, so I would like to welcome you all for this 5-day faculty development program on emerging trends in civil engineering. So as head of the department, so I'm pleased to welcome you all for this faculty development program. And the speciality of this faculty development program is like, so all these sessions will be handled by our own faculty members of the department. And let me brief about our department also. So we have established our department in the year 2008. And our program, BE Civil Engineering, is accredited by NBA under Tier 1. And also we are offering a ME Construction Engineering and Management program. And our department is a recognized research center by Anna University. So we can guide the research scholars for their PhD program. Now coming back to the topic of the session, that is repair and strengthening systems. So today I'm going to cover these areas, like let me give an introduction on the different types of buildings. And I will also talk about the distress in the structures. And also I'll be talking about the retrofitting of the masonry buildings, as well as I will focus on the repair and strengthening aspects of the concrete structures. And finally, the references which have been used for preparing this presentation. So these are the types of buildings. So we categorize the buildings as the engineered buildings, semi-engineered buildings, and non-engineered buildings. So these type of buildings will talk about the safety aspects. For example, in an engineered building, so we take almost care in designing the building, and we construct the buildings as per the Indian standard specifications, and we include all the forces, including the wind and earthquake forces. So this is a properly designed and construction building as per the codal specifications. So such type of buildings we call it as engineered buildings. Whereas in semi-engineered buildings, so we construct the buildings using the materials such as burnt clay bricks, and which are laid in cement on lime water and without proper design. So they come under the semi-engineered type of buildings. So we use the burnt clay bricks using the cement or lime water, and here we don't care much about the design of the building. So that is a semi-engineered building. And coming to the non-engineered buildings, so here the buildings are constructed mainly using the non-standard materials, so using waste materials, or we depend upon the local construction companies for the construction of the buildings. So this category, we call it as non-engineered buildings. So in the case of engineered buildings, the safety aspects are more, whereas in the case of non-engineered buildings, so the safety or the strength or stability of the buildings are comparatively less when compared to the engineered buildings and the semi-engineered buildings. Now we have to consider, so as we see, like in non-engineered buildings, so the distress will be more, or we have to take almost care in retrofitting of such non-engineered buildings. So normally this semi-engineered buildings and non-engineered buildings, they require much attention, and we have to go for repair works or strengthening works or retrofitting works more often because of the construction, compromise in the construction quality and the standards. So coming to the distress part of the existing structures, so these are listed as the sources of deficiency. So as I said, non-engineered buildings need more focus, and when the seismic forces are not considered in the design of buildings, and when the original design and detailing is deficient. And in the construction part also, we have certain deficiencies. Or in some cases, there may be some changes in the code of practice. So there may be revisions in the code. So based on the revisions, so we need to upgrade our building, or there may be some distresses also in the structures. And if there are certain changes made in the purpose of a building, for example, if a building has been constructed for one purpose and later on, if the purpose or the function of the building has to be changed, so in that case, so we have to look into those aspects also. And also, as we know, the concrete building materials, they may deteriorate over a period of time. For example, the concrete is in the RCC buildings, we can see the corrosion at the later stages when the age of the structure increases. So there may be deterioration of the building materials also, which may lead to the corrosion. So these are the sources of deficiency. So one is the non-engineered building, and we have to consider the proper forces in the design. So when the forces are not considered adequately, it may lead to the distress in the structures. And we have to take care of the design aspects also, especially in the RC structures. So we have to consider the detailing aspects also as per the codal provisions. So in that case, so if the proper design is not there, if the detailing is not done properly, so that may lead to the distress in the structures. And also these are the, some of the aspects like beyond our control, like when there are changes in the code of practice, or when there is a change in the functionality or usage of the building. So in that case, we have to strengthen the buildings accordingly. So these are the factors causing the distress in the buildings. So normally the factors are categorized into two. One is the external factor, another one is the internal factor. So the external factor is so the overloads due to the dead load, live load, wind load, and seismic forces. So which are not properly accounted in the design. And another factor is the differential settlement in the foundation. So because of the soil conditions. So we may experience the differential settlements. So in that case, these are the factors which cause the distress in the structures externally. Whereas internally, so we may have some dimensional changes also in the members. So because of the various factors like the penetration of moisture and temperature changes, then horizontal shifts of building components, then volume changes due to chemical action, and weaknesses in the tensile and the shear stresses. So these are the internal factors which cause the distress in the structures. And before deciding on the repairing strategy or the strengthening strategy, so we have to evaluate the structure efficiently. So we have to do the condition assessment of the existing structure. So that is to determine the existing condition of the structure. And also we have to identify the cause of deficiency in the existing structure. And we have to establish the current load carrying capacity of the system. So based on that only we have to evaluate the correct strengthening system, and also we have to evaluate whether the strengthening is feasible for the present structure. So evaluation is very, very important for the existing structures before deciding on the type of repair strategies or type of strengthening strategies or type of retrofitting strategies. So you have to evaluate the current condition of the structure, and you have to estimate the present load carrying capacity of the system. So the condition surveys, as I said, it is very, very important before assessing or before deciding on the type of the retrofitting strategies. And in the evaluation, so we have to include certain things like what are the past modifications done in the existing structure. So whether, so we have done some modifications in the existing structure in the past. And also we have to look on the actual size of the elements and the materials used in the construction. So we have to look into the actual material properties also. And we have to identify the location of the cracks, the size of the cracks, then cause of cracks. Then if there is spalling, we have to locate or identify the location of the spalling. And also we have to see, in case of corrosion, we have to see the extent of corrosion also. And we have to also estimate, or we need to have the data on the quantity of rebars or the quantity of reinforcement in the existing structure, and also the location of rebar. So all these, the parameters are to be considered before evaluation. So we have to do everything, and we need to have the proper data for the proper strengthening of the structure. And coming to the retrofitting part of the masonry buildings. So here, so whatever discussions we are going to do here, it is based on the IS 13935, that is 2009. So this is the Indian standard for seismic evaluation, repair and strengthening of the masonry buildings. This is the guideline given by the Bureau of Indian Standards. So this particular picture gives an idea about the typical damages that may occur in the masonry buildings. So if you can see here, so you can see here, so above the lintel, so this is the lintel. So you can see here the incline cracks which are developed. And also you can see the failure at the corners. And this is the out of plane failure of the walls that I will explain in the subsequent slides. And this is the collapsed parapet wall and collapsed roof. And here you can see the beams near to fall down. And in the walls, you can see the vertical cracks. And here, this is the out of plane failure in case of long walls. So whenever in the masonry buildings, actually the length of the wall is also very, very crucial in the construction and design. So this is the out of plane failure at the mid length of the long walls. And you can see the vertical cracks here at the corners due to the rocking of the walls. So these are the typical damages in the masonry buildings. So we have to consider all these things normally in the design and the construction of the masonry buildings. And these are the 4 important principles of the masonry building, especially under the action of seismic forces. So here we have the first one, this integral box action. So this is very, very important. And the integrity of the corners and integrity of the walls. And also there is a principle on this is also very, very important on the location of the openings, on the number of openings in the masonry building. So we will see each of these principles in detail. So as I said, this box action is very, very important for the effective the functioning of the masonry building. So in this diagram, you can see the pushing of the wall, which is in the plane of the wall. So this is the wall. So if you have the forces which are acting in the plane of the wall, so this is a strong direction. Whereas if you consider the forces, so this is the plane of the wall here. So here the forces acting in this direction, so which is a weak direction. So because of this, so there will be a tendency of the walls to topple like this. So this is the out of plane forces. So this is the direction of the wall, whereas the forces are acting in the other direction. So which may cause the toppling of the wall. So this is, so in order to prevent this, box action is very much essential. So if this is the direction of the earthquake forces, so there is a possibility of out of plane collapse of the unconnected walls. So if the walls are not properly connected, so in that case, because of the earthquake force direction, so there is a possibility of the out of plane collapse of the walls like this. So this wall will topple like this. So because of this box action is very, very important, and how to provide this box action in the masonry buildings. So this is an example of a box action. So if this box is tied properly, so that will have a effect on the behavior of the masonry building. So here you can see, so that means that the walls ought to be tied up properly like this. So here they have used L-shaped double bars for the proper connection of the walls. So if the walls are properly connected, so that it will provide a box action, so which will provide the good stability against the out of plane bending of the walls. Now you can see here in this photo, so, and also we will talk about the functions of the bands in the masonry buildings, or the importance of providing the bands in the masonry buildings. So this is a typical failure of a masonry building because of the absence of the bands. So you can see the lack of integrity of this particular structure because of the absence of the bands. So here you can see the different types of bands that are to be provided in the masonry buildings. So at the plinth level, so we have the plinth band. And at the roof level, you have the roof band. And you have the lintel band. So these bands are very much essential in order to provide the stability to the masonry buildings. So if the proper tie-up is there between the walls, and also if the properly bands are provided, then in that case, this masonry building will act as a single integral unit due to the action of earthquakes. So similarly, the walls and roofs also should be properly connected. So in order to provide the structural integrity to the masonry buildings. Then coming to the retrofitting aspects of the masonry buildings. So in case of cracks, so we have to fix the crack, and also we can in order to strengthen the junctions of the walls, so we can go for stitching techniques using ferrocement plates, and we can strengthen the walls by providing the bands that is in the horizontal direction, that is called as horizontal belts. And we can do the strengthening of the walls by providing vertical belts also. Then we can do strengthening around the doors and windows. And we should also have a proper control on the length of the walls. And the control should be there on the positioning of openings as well as the number of openings in the masonry buildings. So these are some of the retrofitting techniques that can be adopted for masonry buildings. So coming to the member level strengthening in the masonry buildings. So if we want to do the repairing of the cracks in the masonry walls, so we can do the grouting process using a grout injection nozzle. And here you can see, so the nozzles ought to be provided in proper spacing. So normally 0.3 to 0.6 meters. So we have to provide nozzles at adequate or suitable intervals in order to repair the cracks using the grouting technique. And based upon the crack width also, so we can recommend the suitable procedure for the repair of the cracks in the masonry walls. Suppose if the crack width is less than 1 mm, so we can do the injection technique, or we can repair it with injection technique with epoxy resins. And if the crack width is between 0.3 to 3 mm, so under these circumstances, we can repair the cracks with the cement grouting and with suitable admixtures also, because we have to reduce the shrinkage. So in that case, we have to repair it with the cement grouting. Mr. Vijay sir, is my voice audible? Is my voice audible? Yeah, thank you. So based upon the crack width, so we can recommend suitable procedures for the repair of the cracks. So if it is between 0.3 and 3, so we can go for cement grouting and with suitable admixtures, because we have to reduce the shrinkage also. And so for that, we add suitable admixtures to reduce the shrinkage. And if the crack width is greater than 10 millimeter, then we have to reconstruct the damaged area with new brick units. So these are the recommended procedures based on the crack width in the masonry walls. So this is the as per IS 13935 2009. So in the case of so this first figure, we can see the grout or epoxy injection in the cracks by providing the nozzles at suitable intervals. So before repairing the cracked masonry walls, so we have to remove the existing plaster, and we have to crack the, crack sealing is done. So after the cleaning process only, and we are providing grout boards, and we use the cement mortar and the flat stone chips for the repair. And also we provide the wire mesh on the front face. So that is also one of the technique. So we provide the wire mesh on both front and back faces of the walls, apart from the filling the cracks with the cement mortar. So that I will show in the next slide. So for wider cracks, actually we use the wire mesh along with the plaster. So for cracks more than 5 millimeter, so we use the wire meshes also along with the plastering. So here you can see a cement mortar and the wire mesh in the cracks. So we use the wire mesh in the front face of the wall as well as the back face of the wall. And we used to paste this wire mesh in the existing wall using the cement plaster. So this is the section you can see. So the existing plaster is removed, and also we will seal the cracks, and we will use the wire mesh also along with the cement plaster for the repair. So this is again as per IS 13935, so we use the injection holes for injecting the grouts or epoxy resins. So in this way, we have to do the repairing technique using the grout or epoxy injection by using injection holes. And this is another technique the strengthening of the junctions of the walls. So here you can see here. So we have to fill the cracks, and we have to connect the corners like this using the weld mesh or other reinforcement techniques. And normally we call this as ferrocement plate. So since we use the welded wire mesh along with the cement mortar, so we call this as a ferrocement plate. So we have to strengthen the walls with the ferrocement plates at the junction of the walls. And the length of the ferrocement plates should be 300 mm on each side of the crack on inside, and the wall thickness plus 300 mm on outside. And the thickness of the ferrocement plate is, so you have 25 mm with, or 25 mm by 25 mm with 35 mm thick micro cover concrete. So this is the stitching of the junctions of the walls with the ferrocement plates. And the next one is the strengthening of the walls, as I said earlier, by using bands. So horizontal belts like this. So the provision of these horizontal belts, so they ensure the integral action. So this is the horizontal belt. So the width of the belt is 300 mm. So along the walls, with continuity at the corners of the junction. So we have to provide continuity of the horizontal belts at the corners of the walls as well as at the junction of the walls. And normally we provide the welded mesh, long wires spaced at 30 mm with transverse wires spaced at 300 mm. So this is the welded mesh which is used for providing the horizontal belts. And for covering, actually, we use the micro concrete of 35 millimeter thickness. So this is about the horizontal belts. So you can see here the horizontal belts which are provided above the openings and below the roof at the eave level. So this is the horizontal belt. And you can see the tie up at eave band level. So this is the way you have to provide the horizontal belts at suitable levels. And in some cases, we have to provide the vertical bands also like this. So we have to strengthen the walls by providing the vertical belts. So you can see here. So we can have the first layer, that is micro concrete. Then over that we can have steel mesh. Then again, you have the micro concrete second layer. So in order to improve the integrity of the walls, so we can provide this vertical bands also using the welded mesh, or we can go for the steel mesh. And for plastering, we can use micro concrete. So you can see here, this is the horizontal belt and this is the vertical belt. So this picture shows the strengthening of the walls in existing buildings by vertical belts. So at the corner, that is the vertical steel reinforcement is provided like this, and this is the horizontal belt. And the width of the belt is normally 300 millimeter. So I'm extremely sorry for the loss of connection. So someone can let me know, like, which is the slide which was last seen? This one? Someone can let me know. Whether these slides are covered. These are all covered. Please let me know. This may be the last slide. Someone can let me know so that I can start with that slide. Yes, please.
Yes, ma'am. You need to start with rack replace.
Which one? This one? This one?
Rack replace. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay. Yes, thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Okay, so this is as per the IS 13935. So this is the restoration of the cracked masonry walls with the help of the wire mesh and also with the help of the cement. And another technique walls by so these are the horizontal belts you can see here. And similarly, you can provide the vertical belts also, like this, using mesh and the microconcrete. So here you can see the provision of the vertical belts like this. And the strengthening of the around the doors and windows also can be done. So these are the belts which are provided around the doors and openings to strengthen. So this is the strengthening around the openings. And the installation procedure of the bands or the belts. So you have to remove the existing plastic and you have to rack out the mortar joints to about 20 mm depth. And after the cleaning the surface, we have to wet the surface with water. Then you have to apply the first coat of cement slurry with 12 to 16 mm thickness microconcrete. So after the first layer of cement slurry, you have to fix the nails. In the subsequent slides, then you have to apply the second layer of microconcrete. And the length of the wall is also very, very important. So we have to have a restriction on the length of the wall. So in any case, like in the stone buildings, so we cannot exceed the length of the wall beyond 4 meters. In case if we have to provide the length of the wall more than 5 meters, 4 meters, then you have to provide the suitable buttresses like this. Or you can go for pilasters also. Pilaster is nothing but a rectangular column which projects from the wall. So either you can go for buttresses or the pilasters in case if the wall length exceeds 5 meters. And you have to restrict the spacing between the buttresses also. It should be spaced less than 4 meters. So this is in this way you can have a control on the length of the walls. And next is the control on the openings. So this is the specification normally. So this is the width of the door and this is the width of the window. So this A plus B should be less than D by 2. So you can see this is the wall length. Therefore, the total length of the opening should be less than 50% of the wall length in a story. And preferably, we should have only one door and one window in a wall. And also the spacing, that is the spacing between the edge and the door, the position. So this A should be greater than H by 6. So otherwise, what will happen if we have more number of doors and windows? So it will cause the uplifting of the masonry like this. So rocking of the pier will happen. So because of that, you can experience the crushing here. So in order to avoid this, so we should have the proper, the positioning as well as the number of doors and windows in a wall. And global level strengthening, we can also do the global level strengthening by enclosing the entire building by providing the wall jackets like this, by using the chicken wire mesh or welded wire mesh with the cement mortar cover. So normally the fixing of the connection between your mortar and the wire mesh is achieved by providing the staples like this. And also this steel mesh should be anchored properly to the foundation. So you can see here the walls with steel mesh and cement mortar jacketing. So this is the global level strengthening where we provide the wall jacketing on all the 4 sides of the building. So this is as per the IS 13935. So you can see all the details in IS 13935. And this is the wall strengthening. As I said, this is the deteriorated wall. So the strengthening process is going on. So here we use the staples like this in order to fix the wire mesh to the cement mortar. So either we can go for the global on all the wall jacketing, or we can restrict with partial wall jacketing like this using the wire mesh and the cement mortar. So here you can see if we go for partial wall jacketing, if T is the thickness, so we have to provide this for 2 times T. So this is 2 times thickness of the wall. So in this way, we have to provide the partial wall jacketing. Then another global level strengthening is the pre-stressing of the walls using the pre-stressing rods and the anchor plates. So this will also help in providing the structural integrity of the masonry buildings. So as the pre-stressing techniques have been well developed, so we can go for the wall pre-stressing also in order to improve the structural integrity of the masonry building. So here you can see the anchor plate and this is the steel rod which is pre-stressed. So this will help in providing the stability of the masonry building. And another member level strengthening is the repointing bed joints. So that is removal of the existing bed joint and you have to repoint with a new cement mortar. And you can also use the mild steel rods also for strengthening. So this is one of the member level strengthening technique. Or we can go for RCC jacketing also like this. So this is the existing wall and we are strengthening with the reinforced concrete jacketing like this. And coming to the strengthening of the arches, so this can be done in many ways by providing the tie rods, or we can go with the RC jacketing, or we can provide the buttresses also like this. These are the several ways by which the arches can be strengthened. So this is a strengthening of an arched opening in masonry wall. So we can provide the tie rods. So you can see here. So this is the tie. So we can prevent the cracking of the arches by providing the ties like this. So here you can see the flat iron rods. So you can see the I-beams also here. So you can see here the I-beams. So you can see the lintel consisting of steel channels or I-shapes could be inserted just above the arch to take the load and relieve the arch from the stresses. So you can see here. So here also you can see above the arches we insert a beam. And we have the I sections also. And addition to that we have the tie rods. So these are the different strengthening techniques for the arches in the masonry walls. And another thing what we can do is the reduction of the loads, or we can change the load path in order to relieve the stresses also. So by insertion of lintels, so that we can change the load path of the transfer of stresses. Or we can insert the new columns like this. So by this way, so the load transfer path can be changed by providing the new members like this, or by providing the lintels like this. And another way is providing the FRP composites for strengthening the masonry walls. So fiber reinforced polymers for strengthening the masonry walls. So these are all about the masonry building. So we have discussed about the different repair techniques and also the strengthening techniques in the masonry buildings. And coming back, let us move on to the concrete buildings. So in concrete buildings, these are the factors which contribute to the causes of distress. So extreme load conditions, inadequate detailing, waterproofing failure, wrong specification, poor workmanship, poor detailing, poor quality of concrete, selection of material, that is poor selection of material, and lower cover to the reinforcement. So these are the various factors which contribute to the distress in the concrete buildings. So why we have to strengthen the concrete buildings? So as I said, like improper design or construction, and if we modify or change the purpose of usage of a particular system structure, then there are other damages also which are caused by the environmental effects or the hazards, and basically to increase the lifetime of the structures. And especially with concrete, we have identified certain defects like mechanical, then mechanical factors, then chemical reactions, then physical factors. Like mechanical, like due to the sudden impact forces or overloads, then movement or settlement, then explosion, vibration. So these are the conditions which causes the defects in concrete. And chemical reaction, like we have the alkali aggregate reaction in concrete, then aggressive agents like sulfates, water salts, then biological activities. Then we have the temperature variations like freeze thaw, then shrinkage, erosion, wear. So these are some of the factors which contribute to the defects in concrete. So we have to identify the distress in the concrete structures, so which may be in different forms like cracking, bracing, spalling, disintegration, scaling, dusting, pop-out, honeycombs, then buckling of reinforcement, seepage, delamination, corrosion, erosion. So these are the distresses in the concrete structures. So here you can see the exposure of the reinforcement, the corrosion of the reinforcement because of the inadequate cover, then honeycombs, etc. So first we have to do the visual inspection of the concrete. So we have to identify the crack location, crack width, crack depth, etc. So cracking, then shear cracks, then diagonal cracks, flexural cracks, then dusting of concrete. So you can see the dust formation, then peeling, leakages, pitting, pop-outs, then spalling and dusting. Then blistering of the surfaces you can see, then pug holes, honeycombing, delamination, so disintegration of the concrete. So disintegration due to erosion and cavitation damage, then efflorescence also. So this we can identify through the visual inspection. And we have to do principle testing also for concrete, testing the integrity, quality, strength, and durability. So we have certain non-destructive tests, partially destructive test, and core test. And we have to measure the concrete quality by surface hardness test, radiography, petrographic examination, UPV test, and radiometry test. And for corrosion, like for monitoring the corrosion activity, so we have to do a inspection, visual inspection, then hammer testing, then we have to measure the thickness of the cover to steel, then chemical action, if there is any, that is chloride ingress or the carbonation. Then we have to do the corrosion mapping also. So these are the main catalysts for corrosion. We have the chloride ions and the carbonation. So the chloride ions are very like dangerous. So they will break the protective layer of the steel because of the alkalinity within the. So here the carbonation also we have to see whether there is any carbonation effect on the concrete. So this is because of the atmospheric CO2. So which permeates through the pores and reacts with the alkalinity. So these are the major catalysts for the corrosion. And we have to test the chloride levels, test for carbonation, and other techniques we have to do. So these are all the investigations, different tests, pull-off testing, cover meter, core drilling and testing, cement hammer test, half cell potential meter test, radiography, and thermal imaging. And inadequate covers, like if we provide the low cover to the steel reinforcement, so we can see the carbonation effect and the chloride ingress, so altering its passive nature. So this again, which can create the delamination of the sections, which will ultimately fail. So you can see the failure of like the damages in the piers, bridge piers. So the concrete repairing has to be done. So we have to see the extent of corrosion of reinforcement, and also we have to see the quantity of reinforcement also provided in the existing structure. Even if there is insufficient reinforcement, then in that case, their structure may show some deterioration. Then we have to see whether there are any chemical damages, excessive loads are coming on the structure, structural damages, fire damages, seismic damages, and blast damages. So under these conditions, we have to go for the concrete repair. Then current state of repair practices, if you see, the quality gaps are there. So because of the construction specifications not practiced in the field or not adopted in the field, then symptom treatment. So focus on the visible damage rather than the root causes. So we have to identify the root cause thoroughly, and we have to analyze it thoroughly for the root causes, and the lack of understanding, of course. So because so we have to understand the deterioration. In the slides. In the slide. ಇದನ್ನು. So the rehabilitation work has to be carried out, especially when the distributions of columns are not symmetric and the distribution of walls are not symmetric. And we have different stiffnesses from one to another floors, and we have excessive openings. So, and also to make the building as a unity by tying together all the components of the building and to avoid the brittle failure. So, for all these reasons, we have to do the rehabilitation work. So, in order to improve the lateral strength of the building. So, these are the methods for repair. As I said, patching, grouting, crack filling, micro-concreting, and using the polymer modified mortar, etc. And restoration, so we can go for reprofiling, applying protective coatings, cathodic protection, and waterproofing, surface treatments, etc. And for rehabilitation and retrofitting, we can go for jacketing, FRP wrapping, steel plate bonding, and we can enlarge the sections. Then we can go for corrosion protection systems, etc. So these are the different methods we can go for repair, restoration, and rehabilitation. And for concrete repairs, normally epoxy mortar or cement-based mortars or polymer modified mortars also we can go. Then micro-concreting, then rust removal, corrosion protection, then bonding agents. Then FRP, steel plate bonding and jacketing, and protective coatings also we can go with epoxy coatings or polyurethane coatings or fireproofing coatings or intumescent coatings. So this is the comparison of the repair and the retrofitting. So this is the damaged one, this is the original one, this is the damaged one. So we can restore, because of the repairing techniques, we can restore the structure to this level. And if you do the retrofitting, we can restore the structure to this level. So which can improve the ductility of the system also. Repairing alone will not help in improving the strength as well as the ductility. So when you do retrofitting, so both strength and ductility can be enhanced. And for seismic damages, these are the reasons, like buildings with irregular plans like this, have like floating columns, like due to floating columns, seismic damages may be there, and discontinuity of the walls. So we can see here open story or the soft story. So you can see here, and buildings with overhanging projections. So these are the reasons for the seismic damages. You can see a typical damage where in a building which has a lot of overhanging projections. So seismic deficiencies, we have inadequate depth and size of the footing, inadequate size of members, inadequate amount of reinforcement, then missing of bands and masonry walls, then vulnerable parapet walls and staircase, and soft or weak story. So these are the seismic deficiencies of the RC buildings. So the aims of strengthening, so mainly to upgrade the lateral strength of the structure and increase the ductility of the structure and increase the strength as well as ductility. So this you can see. So before strengthening and after strengthening. So this is improving the strength alone, and this is improving the ductility alone. And this is a combination of both strength as well as the ductility can be improved. So these are some of the retrofitting techniques of RCC, like adding shear walls, adding infill walls, bracings, adding wing walls or buttresses, wall thickening, mass reduction, and damping and base isolation techniques. This is the global level, and local level we can do the jacketing, that's member level, jacketing of columns, beam column joints, and strengthening of the footings. So, and while selecting the repair material, so we have to some essential parameters. So it should have the low shrinkage characteristics, then compatible thermal expansion between the repair material and the existing surface. Then workability also we have to see, and it should have low permeability, then alkaline characteristics, then chemical resistance should be there. And another thing is good bond with the substrate. So these are some of the essential parameters for the selection of raw materials. And we can go for cementitious systems or polymer systems. And the selection criteria is mainly it should match with the substrate properties, that is existing surface properties. And we have to consider the exposure conditions, and we have to evaluate the long-term performance. Then types of repair materials, so cement slurry, cement mortar, expansive cement, quick setting cement, gypsum cement. We can use steel reinforcement, GI wires, rolled steel sections. And advanced materials, we have the epoxy resins, polymer modified products, and fiber reinforced polymers. So crack repairs, we have different methods, and surface preparation is involved. Then we can do the repair of cracks with the injection grouting, routing, stitching, and these are the strengthening methods. And we'll discuss some of the repair techniques. For example, this is a floor damage at the ground floor. So if the size of the crack is small, then it can be repaired with rich concrete mortar or by some epoxies. So cement slurry, normally 1:3 is adopted. So these are the minor cracks. So of course, we have to do the surface preparation effectively. So concrete cleaning. So for cleaning, we can go for these techniques: low pressure water jetting, high pressure water jetting, blasting, steam cleaning, needle gunning, scabbling, and flame spanning. So these are some of the techniques for cleaning the surface. And we have to remove the defective concrete portion also. So for that, we have different methods. Then application of mortar. So either we can apply using hand, then fluid micro concrete, and spray applied concretes. So this is. So we can go with the polymer modified mortars also, repair depths to 10 to 75 mm. And typical size is less than 0.5 meters square on vertical faces. So the manual placement of the repair mortars. So these are some of the pictures where you can see the different processes in the repair of cracks by using the mortars. Then for large scale repairs, we have to go with flowing concrete or the sprayed concrete. So flowing concrete is nothing but the self-compacting concrete, which has good properties, flowing properties. So these are some of the specifications. We use the rapid hardening Portland cement. The aggregate grading is less than 10 mm. And we have to look into the shrinkage properties also. And it should have the high strength. And here, this is a typical problem where you can see the settlement of the ground floor. So the repairing has been done. So by leveling the area first and washing the damaged area with water, then we do the concreting of 1:1.5:3. Then we do the replastering. And the cement slurry used is 1:3. So for minor cracks, so we can do the grouting. So you can see the fixing of nozzles here. And we inject the grout through the nozzles. So here you can see the nozzles which are fixed at suitable intervals. So we have to inject the grout through one nozzle. So we have to do it till we see the grout coming out from the next nipple. Then we have to move on to the next nipple and we have to replaster the surface. And this is another technique which is routing and sealing. So here this is the simplest technique. So this can be used for both fine cracks as well as for larger cracks. So we have to first enlarge the cracks and you have to seal it with a suitable joint sealant or rich mortar. And this is mostly used for floors and pavements. And one of the defects we can see here in routing and sealing technique is over a period of time, we can see the swelling here. So swelling can be there. So that is one of the drawbacks of this particular technique. So this is the routing and sealing process where you can see the original crack and we extend the crack like this and we use the joint sealers or the mortars for sealing the crack. Then another technique is the stitching. So here you can see the stitching process. So this is the crack. So we drill the holes normally to fix the dogs. So these are called as dogs. And we have to fill the holes with non-shrink, slurry or epoxy. So this is the stitching technique. So either you can go for staples like this, or you can, another technique in stitching is you can use the steel strips like this. And we can fix the steel strips using the bolts as done here. So either you can go for staples or you can use the steel plates with bolts for stitching the cracks. And this is one of the work which we have done using the geopolymer mortar. So this is one of my research area. So where I have prepared the geopolymer mortar that is without cement even. to repair the concrete surface. So this is a laboratory investigation. So where we can see the existing concrete substrate, and this is the geopolymer mortar. And we have carried out certain studies to evaluate the bond strength of this geopolymer mortar. So this is this specimen, we call it as slant shear specimen. So this is the test which is performed for testing the bond strength of repair material as per ASTM C882. So here we use the cylinder of 50 mm diameter and 100 mm height. So we prepare a concrete substrate, and over that we fill the repair material. And we do the test in CTM, that is called a slant shear test. We compress the specimen and we estimate the bond strength of the samples. So geopolymer mortar we have tested. In fact, we have found that when compared to the conventional cement mortar, this geopolymer mortars are effective with good bond strength, and therefore it can be used as a repair material for the existing concrete surface. So this is the finding of our research study. So this is the slant shear bond test. This is the specimen. So this is the existing concrete and this is the repair material. So these are the specimens we have tested and we have estimated the bond strength. So we could see that this geopolymer mortar has better bonding characteristics when compared to the cement mortar. So another one is the floor damage, you can see. So if you have larger cracks, apart from the cement slurry, you can use the additional reinforcements like double bars also. So that I will explain here, especially in the repair of the RCC slabs. So you have to provide support to the slabs. You have to remove the concrete cover, clean the steel bars and coating them with epoxy. Then you can see here the installation of the vertical dowels and the horizontal dowels at 10-inch spacing in each direction. So you can do the crack repair by using the additional reinforcement also using double bars. So you can see the reinforcement here, additional reinforcement. So these are the double bars. Then you have to pour the layer of the concrete. So this is how you can repair the RCC slabs also, by using the double bars as well as the additional reinforcement. Then coming to the column damages and the beam damages. So it may be due to spalling of concrete, or we can see some cracks in beam and column, or you can see the crushing of concrete and you can see the buckling of the bars also. So you can see the exposure of the steel reinforcement because of the inadequate cover and due to earthquakes. So you can see the damages like this. So these are some of the damages. So the problems with the existing columns are that non-conformity with the current building design and the codes, and low quality of concrete, poor workmanship, inadequate detailing of reinforcement. So all these factors, they will contribute to the problems with the existing RC columns. So normally for columns, we can go for concrete jacketing or steel jacketing or fiber jacketing. So this is how the confined concrete will work. So this is the unconfined concrete or poorly confined concrete. So if the concrete is confined in an effective way, so this is how the concrete will behave under compression. So you can see in the well-confined concrete, so you can see the subsequent, like you can see the enhanced plastic zone, which shows the ductility enhancement of the members. Therefore, if the concrete is confined properly with suitable techniques, so we can see the significant enhancement in the ductility of the existing columns. So these are some of the strengthening strategies. We can go for the enlargement of the section. Section enlargement. So we can provide some additional reinforcement and we can do the section enlargement with reinforcement and additional concrete. So this is the existing one. So we can go for section enlargement also. Or we can go for external reinforcement like provision of fiber reinforced polymer sheets or steel plates, whatever. Or we can do the load redistribution also by providing additional supports, or we can change the load path for effective load transfer. So this is a simple technique where you can do for columns. So repairing with again rich mix concrete. So removing the existing portion and we have to fill it with rich mix of concrete. So you can go with the section enlargement, as I said earlier. You can provide additional reinforcement and then you can do the concreting again. So here you can see. So here the section enlargement is happening with the help of concrete jackets. So this is the additional reinforcement and enlarging has been done for the existing column. So this is with the help of steel plates. So you can see here the encasement of the column with the help of steel plates. And coming to this fiber reinforced polymers, here you can use different fibers, carbon, glass, and basalt. So each having different material properties. And carbon fibers are having higher strength when compared to the glass fibers. And these are the fabrics which are used along with the resin in order to strengthen the existing system. So we can go for adhesives like either polyester adhesives or epoxy adhesives. And this is again one of my experimental work where I have used the glass fibers for strengthening the columns. So in glass fibers, we can go for either chop strand mat or woven roving mat. In chop strand mat, you can see the orientation of fibers in different directions. Whereas in woven roving, it will be arranged in a different pattern. So normally for glass fibers, we can go for this polyester resin for pasting the mats on the existing concrete surface. So here the compatibility between the fiber and the resin is also very, very important for the strengthening to be effective. So these are the properties you can see for glass fiber reinforced polymer. Tensile strength is 150 to 250. And the modulus of elasticity is 11,000 to 90,500. The flexural strength also. So this is my work where I have used a glass fiber reinforced polymer for strengthening the RCC columns. So both circular columns as well as the RCC columns we have studied. So this is a circular column. So we can see the load enhancement. So this is the unconfined column where you don't have the FRP jacketing. So this is the control column where you can see the load of 391 kilonewton. So with one layer of wrapping, you can see the strength enhancement. From 391, it has gone to 535. So this is for chop strand mat. Similarly, for woven roving mat, you can see still enhancement of 563 kilonewton. And also we have done the exposure studies to saline water to see the effectiveness of the GFRP wrapping under the saline water conditions. Of course, due to saline exposure, the strength has come down to a certain level, but still it is higher than the unconfined column. Therefore, this FRP jacketing is very much effective in enhancing the load carrying capacity as well as the ductility of the columns. So again, we have tested rectangular columns. You can see here, this is the rectangular column. Again, we have tested with different aspect ratios. We have gone with square as well as rectangular, and we have tested in the lab. And we have seen how effective the FRP is in increasing the load carrying capacity as well as the ductility. So these are the tested columns. You can see the failure of the column. If you have a close look up at the failure, you can see the buckling of the reinforcement. And you can see the delamination of the FRP also. But when compared to the unconfined column, this confined column is very much effective in enhancing the strength as well as the ductility. So you can see here the ultimate unconfined for one layer and for two layers. So this is how the strength enhancement took place in the case of confined columns. So these are the CFRP plates. You can see carbon fiber plates. So you can see the strengthening of the slabs using carbon fiber reinforced polymers and columns using carbon fiber reinforced polymers. So this is for flexural strengthening. You can see column confinement. So this is the column beam junction. So this is very much crucial, especially during the earthquakes. So you can experience failures. Structure can experience failures at the junction of the columns and the beams because of the poor detailing of the reinforcement also. So in that case, so that can be strengthened. External strengthening can be done with the help of the fiber reinforced polymers. So to improve the to improve its shear resistance as well as the flexural resistance. So you can see here. And the beam column joint, as I said, it is very much crucial actually in the case of framed buildings. So we have to do proper detailing of the beam column junction, and we have to adopt suitable repair techniques for the beam column joints. So you have to support before undertaking the repair work, especially in the beam column junction, we have to provide the adequate support, temporary supports, either the timber post or steel supports you can use. Then we have to strip the concrete cover of the columns and beams. And you have to check the number of reinforcement details in the existing system. Suppose in case if the reinforcement is not sufficient, you have to provide the additional reinforcement. So here you can see. So if the detailing of the reinforcement is not in accordance with the codal provisions, then you have to do the additional reinforcements and with proper anchoring of the reinforcement of the column and the beam. So you have to do the anchoring of the reinforcement properly. And then concreting has to be done. So for that we use a cone like this to do the concreting work, and we have to pour the concrete. Suppose in case if we don't have the enough space for arranging this kind of setup for pouring the concrete, then we can drill the holes in the slab and we can do the concreting. So here you can see the cone, which can be used for concreting. And you can see some excess portion of the concrete that can be removed or chipped off. So this is the repair technique for the beam column junction. So this is again. And the strengthening of the footing, you can see, we can also do the strengthening of the footing by increasing the size and by providing the additional reinforcement like this. So this is the actual footing. So here we are providing the additional reinforcement, and we are doing the extra concreting or additional concreting. So in that way, we can strengthen the footing also. So the key factors like in the repair or strengthening of the existing systems, either the masonry building or it is if it is a RCC building, so we have to do the proper diagnosis. So we should not just see the symptoms, we have to identify the root cause for the failure or root cause of damages. And before selecting the material, we have to check the material compatibility also. So we have to see the existing structure, what are the materials that are being used in the existing structure. And if we are going for new materials for repair, you have to check the material compatibility to ensure the physical as well as the chemical compatibility. And the execution of repair or strengthening work, the quality should be maintained. We have to follow the codal specifications. We have to adopt the best practices also. And with, of course, proper supervision and adequate supervision. And after the strengthening or repair work is completed, we have to do the monitoring also. So we have to track. We have to track the performance of the repair system, and we have to monitor the performance of the repair system. Suppose in case if it is okay, then it is fine. In case if we found certain problems with the repair system, so we have to address them correctly before the problem becomes severe. So that is called as preventive approach. So these are the things we have to keep in mind before adopting the repair strategies or strengthening strategies. And these are the references which I have used for my presentation. So I have just covered some of the repairing techniques in the masonry buildings and the RCC buildings. So if you have any questions, so we can take it up for discussion. So that's all from my side. If you have any questions. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Hope my presentation was useful, at least to a certain extent, at least to refresh some of the basics of repair strategies or techniques adopted in masonry buildings as well as RCC buildings.
Thank you, ma'am.
So just fill your attendance form for the session before you leave the session.